Hey guys, mjw006 for hosng.com, and today I'll be bringing you a free video. It's a $100 turbo heads up sit and go, and we're against a random opponent, and we're just basically going to play it by ear and jump right in and see how it plays out. So we have King 6 off in the big blind against a random opponent. It's definitely a flat against a min raise. I think King High is generally against a typical opponent's opening range, first hand of a heads up sit and go. So you essentially need to be flatting this hand. Also, just off our opponent's avatar, with the You Mad Bro avatar, I assume that he's someone that does frequent forums or something like that. So I do typically assume that this opponent understands basic raising and c-betting and basic hand ranges and stuff like that. He's also playing a $100 heads up sit and go, and as much as we do get a lot of fish in these games, typically the fish at these stakes have at least some kind of idea about poker in general. So I'm definitely peeling the King 6 offsuit first hand to a min raise, and I'll definitely be peeling a c-bet on this board. We have a backdoor flush draw. We also have King High, which is typically the best hand against a wide button opening range on a 9-9-2 flop. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to peel, and then we're going to see what develops. We turn a 6, which very likely gives us the best hand if we didn't already have the best hand. He goes ahead and bets half the pot again, and his range in this spot, again, he can have a lot of draws in this spot. He can have pocket pairs, he can have draws, he can have a 9 obviously. Although on this board texture, I would expect that a 9 tries to increase the pot size a little bit on the turn by going slightly bigger than half pot. So he can certainly have draws, he can certainly have pocket pairs, but I still think that we stand to have the best hand a reasonable percentage of the time here. So I'm going to peel and evaluate again on the river and see what happens depending on the card. The Queen's actually quite a good card for us here. It quite often shuts down his pocket pairs that are below a Queen X, for example. Basically because pocket pairs at this point in time are worried about me having a 9, and with another overcard there, typically first hand without reads, they'll shut down and take their hand to showdown. The same stands for like 2x and 6x. Generally they are going to take their hand to showdown at this point in time. I imagine aces and kings are going to definitely bet again. Queens obviously are going to go ahead and bet again. And if he did have a hand that he was double barreling, like an ace queen or a king queen or a queen jack or something like that with clubs, then he's definitely going to go ahead and bet here again. If he has 9x, I think he'll go for a bigger bet size here on the river. So maybe 220 to 280, somewhere in that range. Given the fact that he goes for a half pot size bet on the end, I think that we need to go ahead and call, and I think that this is more typically lean towards busted draws, trying to get my draws to fold. And as we end up seeing, he has the 10-8 of diamonds here. The 10-8 of diamonds for a busted gut shot. Not really in love with him going through, but I guess if I'm peeling like my ace highs and my king highs, which I'm probably not going to call 3 streets with them against an unknown, so his triple barrel is probably not that bad when he doesn't stand to have the best hand that often. So certainly something to note straight away that he went 3 streets half pot when he turned equity, and he missed as well. So the 4-6 offsuit's just going to be a fold. King Queen offsuit, I prefer to flat this hand rather than 3-bet it early on, especially when you've won a big pot early. You don't really, it's not the hand that you really want to get like 4-bet this early on in the match when stacks are still like 60 big blinds deep. I think we're far better off peeling that hand. As you see though, against someone that I saw as pretty barrel happy just based off the first hand, I actually went ahead and led in this spot on a 2-8-6 board. Now, we have 2 overcards, we have a backdoor flush draw, we sometimes have the best hand anyway, but generally against someone that I assume is somewhat thinking, this is the type of board that hits our perceived range pretty well. So I want to go ahead here and give ourselves the lead in the pot, and also give us us the chance to take down the pot a reasonable amount of the time on the flop. So we also get to see how he responds against leads in general from this, but given that we have 2 overcards, a backdoor flush draw, and we know that this guy is going to c-bet and he's going to barrel, it's going to be pretty hard for us to be playing the hand out of position without the lead in the pot. So this is a spot where I certainly like to take the lead here and see how he responds to this. And as it turns out, he just folds to our lead. So the Jack 10 off is definitely a raise, and he folds. Would have been folding the 10-3 offsuit to a raise. The King Jack will be a raise. And he flats. Now this is a board texture that typically is the type of board texture that people like to check back with their complete misses. I like to make sure that we bet this with a lot of our hits, because it's a board that if I have like 5-6 offsuit here, then I'm going to check back and give up. But with a hand like King Jack, while checking back middle pair for pot control is okay in some spots, it's certainly not the best thing to do in a spot like this where we have middle pair and a gut shot. On a board that hits a typical opponent's flatting range, well, their perceived range somewhat well. Now, I think that we need to go ahead and bet in this spot because there's a lot of value to be had, because it does hit their perceived range relatively well. We have middle pair here with a gut shot, and obviously the king kicker to go with it. So we can actually value bet this hand here against a lot of his range, because a lot of his 9-10, Jack 10, Jack 8, Jack 7, 9-8, King 9, all of these types of hands we're going to get value out of, and these naked 10x hands as well. So don't fool yourself into seeing people like check back middle pair. A lot of it depends and basically rotates around the board texture as to whether we are going to be checking back middle pair in certain spots, and this is certainly a spot where we need to go ahead and bet middle pair to make sure that we extract the maximum value and also protect our equity. So we go ahead and bet, and we actually just take it down on this board. Jack 6 suited will definitely be flatting this if he raises, which he doesn't. The 10-8 is certainly a raise on the button. Now this is a spot here, however, as opposed to the last spot I was talking about, where I think checking back middle pair is okay. Now, we don't really have any dynamic in regards to him check raising or how he responds against c-bets necessarily, because we're only like 7 hands into the match or so. But with a hand like 10-8 in this spot, our hand's marginal in terms of value betting against 8x hands, because I wouldn't imagine that he's flatting like 8-5, 8-4, 8-3, so on and so forth, out of position. But I would imagine that he's probably flatting Jack 8, Queen 8, 9-8 is probably the only hand the only 8 that's worse than ours. That he peels pre-flop. So it's questionable as to how much value there is to be had on a dry board like this. So I don't mind just checking back here, controlling the size of the pot against King X and better 8x, and also giving some of the worst hands a chance to catch up. Now we do have a backdoor flush draw as well, but say he has like 6-7 here with the 7 of clubs, that's drawing very thin against our hand, for example. There's certainly a decent amount of turns here that we can actually get value out of his hand as well. So given how dry the board is, with middle pair in this spot, it's not so bad to be checking back and seeing how the hand plays out on the turn. The 6 of hearts on the turn, definitely going to go ahead and take a bet now, because as I mentioned, a lot of them hands that we check back against, so say like a 5-7 suited, or like a 6-7, or a 9-10, or a 10-7, or a 10-10, a 10-9 suited or something like that, they actually pick up a small amount of equity. Now whether they'll check call or not, I'm not 100% sure, but we do give them the option by giving them that extra little bit of equity, where some of them hands we might be able to get value out of that we wouldn't have been able to get any value out of on the flop. On the flop, we're more likely to value town ourselves, for example. The 7-9 off, I should be flatting this out of position. It's the bottom of my flatting range. Once again, we're going to go ahead and lead this spot. We've already set up this dynamic, but we flop an open-ended straight draw here on a board that does hit our perceived range. We get lucky and turn the straight once he calls, and we're just going to go ahead and put another bet in. On the river, I think it's perfectly feasible for us to have a hand like Queen Jack here, and also for us to have flush draws. The only hand that did get there is the exact hand that we have in a spot like this. So I tend to think that this is a decent spot to overbet where there's a lot of draws that have busted, so it's very easy for our opponent to think of an excuse to be hero calling us in a spot like this. It's quite clear at this point in time that he has something. If he has a busted draw, it doesn't matter what size we make it here, I think he's going to fold for the most part. So if we make a bet size of say 280 or 300, a pretty value-ish looking size, and a pretty standard bet size here, I think that I think that it's clear that he's going to fold like his hearts, or say Queen Jack, or Ace Queen, or Ace Jack, or any of them hands like that that have just peeled two straights. I also think that he's mostly going to fold an 8 if we bet again, and he's mostly going to fold a 10 as well. Well, some percentage of the time, to a standard value-y looking bet here on the river. I don't think that he can expect that we're going to bet 3 straights out of position here with a pair that's worse than a 10. Obviously, depending on what 10 exactly that is. And he'd probably be right in making that assessment. Now, if he has a king, for example, which is certainly plausible, or if he has 2 pair, like a 10-8 or something like that, then, which I mean, I think 10-8's unlikely given that he didn't raise flop. I think it's more likely that he just had a naked king, for example, in a spot like this. But if he doesn't have any of them stronger hands that he's just flatted 2 straights with, I think that he's going to look to be calling here on the river regardless of what size we make it, and potentially if we make it bigger, he's even more likely to call just because it looks bluffy, and with all the busted draws out there, I think it makes him quite likely to call with them hands. So I do go ahead and make an overbet in this spot, just because I think that his range is certainly weighted a lot more towards hands that are going to want to be hero calling if he is going to call at all on the river. And he goes ahead and folds pretty quickly, so clearly it didn't work out for us, but that's okay because overall I think that's probably the most profitable play against his range. Given that effective stacks have dropped, we're going to decrease our raising size to a min raise. Definitely going to be c-betting this board with bottom pair. This turn card is not a good turn card to be barreling. I think a lot of the hands that peel the flop are going to either increase in raw strength or increase in equity here on the turn. So I think it's definitely a spot where we just need to give up with our hand and basically shut down river as well. He bets half pot on the river. I just don't see any value in calling whatsoever in a spot like this, where even though a couple of the draws missed, like a Jack 10 missed, there's just not enough of basically, as opposed to the hands that have either got there or were already better than ours on the flop. So we're 30 big blinds effective now. An 8-6 offsuit out of position, I'd probably be folding this. It's the top of my folding range, I'd say. I'll peel the 7-8 offsuit against a min raise in that spot. The 3s, we're going to min raise and evaluate. Now he hasn't 3-bet us at all yet, so I'm probably going to fold to a 3-bet in this spot, just because I think his 3-bet's going to be weighted towards a lot more stronger hands, given that he hasn't 3-bet us yet. The ace-10 offsuit, he's got a higher button raising percentage, so I'm just going to be 3-betting here, and I'm going to be calling off against a 4-bet shove at these stack depths. You can't 3-bet ace-10 here and be folding to a shove at these effective stacks. Yep, and he ships it in, and we call, and we're up against kings, which is okay. we certainly gave ourselves the chance to close the match at this point in time. It was unfortunate that he had kings, but them's the breaks. That happens. Raise the ace king and get flattered. Definitely going to continue c-betting. He's played pretty straightforwardly. We haven't been check raised or anything like that yet. Goes ahead and checks calls, and we turn what's most likely the best hand on the turn. Now, if we had a hand like a Jack 10 here, or a 7-8 here, or a 9-10, or basically anything that bricked the flop, this is a perfect spot for us to go ahead and barrel. The king turn is a great spot for us to be double barreling because a lot of his 5x, 6x hands are essentially going to have to give up on this turn card. Some flush draws even and straight draws now will just give their hand up. So this is certainly a spot where you need to be barreling. It's also a reason why I don't love barreling like the ace king here, because I know that he's folding such a huge percentage of the time, but as an overall balance of strategy, you definitely need to be going ahead and maximizing your equity by barreling the turn here with your top pair, top kicker. And he just goes ahead and folds. A 6-9 off is a fold. Definitely min raising the Jack 9 offsuit on the button. And we get flattered, and definitely c-betting this board texture. It clearly hits our perceived range a lot better than it hits his perceived range. King 10 offsuit. I think at this point in time, again, given his high button raising percentage, I think it is a good time to go ahead and 3-bet him. I also think, given that he did see us show down the ace 10 the first time that we 3-bet him, I don't think it's like he's going to be 4-bet shoving wide on us or anything like that at this point in time. We have a hand that's going to flop and play pretty well in a 3-bet pot, so I think it's a pretty good time to go ahead and 3-bet him. And it works out for us. The Jack 8. Again, very similar to the spot before. I think we may have even had the exact same hand on the exact same board texture before. We may have had the Jack 8 on the King 8 5. May have been the exact same. Anyhow, we're going to go ahead and peel a bet on the Queen turn. We do get lucky here and we river a second pair. Now, had we not rivered a second pair, I would certainly be folding to a second bet on this board texture. With the 2 overcards, it's also the disadvantage, I guess, of checking back second pair, just in general. Now, quite often, if I had Jack 6 here and it came King 6-5, I'd be far more likely to go ahead and bet flop than I would in a spot with King 8-5. And the reason is the vulnerability of your second pair. An 8 as a middle pair is generally like the bottom of my checking back range. Generally, if it's my middle pair happens to be a 7, I'll go ahead and bet, because the vulnerability of your middle pair is also important, because quite often your opponent has at least one overcard, so you need to be wary of that and also maximize value depending on the coordination of the board. Now, with a Jack 8 on King 8-5, this is a very uncoordinated board. It's a dry board. There's not a lot that he can have that's worse that's going to peel the flop. A 6-7 will probably peel the flop that we can get value out of, but there's not a bunch of stuff. There's probably more stuff that can potentially turn equity rather than can potentially turn pairs on us. When we get an overcard on the turn, we're definitely going to peel one straight, but depending on what the river card is, quite often our opponent will take a stab if they have a bluff, but they're not going to go ahead and bet 2 straights if they've completely whiffed out. So for that reason, if this river card was, say, a 6 or a 3 or something like that, I just go ahead and fold to a second bet. Given that we river a second pair here, I think it's a pretty clear raise spot. He can definitely be betting King X for value, he can definitely be betting Queen X for value, and sometimes he'll even go ahead and bet like a Jack 10 or a busted draw here again. So I think we definitely need to go ahead and raise here for value against particularly the King X and Queen X type hands. It's also quite confusing for him at this point in time because we don't represent a lot given that we made our second pair on the river. And it's certainly a spot where we're raise folding as well. We're definitely not raise calling in that spot. And he calls it off with the Queen 10, which is exactly what we were after. Flat the Jack 8 offsuit here out of position. We get a really dry ace high flop here out of position, and we're just going to fold to a c-bet. There's no need to try to win every pot. It's certainly a good spot to just be given up. The 4-5 offsuit here on the button. We're going to keep raising. He hasn't been free betting us. We certainly are comfortable playing pots in position against this certain opponent, so we're not going to be folding much, basically, in terms of hands on the button. Get the 4-5 again. Going to be raising again. And we do get 3-bet this time. It's a pretty clear let go given that he hasn't 3-bet us at all, I don't think. And we're certainly at the bottom of our range there with the 4-5 offsuit. 10-5 off's a pretty clear fold in the big blind. Going to be raising the 8-9. And he goes ahead and 3-bets us again. Now this is the second time in the space of 2 buttons that he's 3-bet us, and it's pretty well. It can be pretty clear that at this point in time he's recognised that we're raising close to every single one of our buttons, and maybe he's going to try to exploit that by 3-betting us. Given that we folded to the first 3-bet, I'm not prepared at this stack depth of like 30 big blinds deep to let go of the ace-9, so I'm just going to go ahead and 4-bet shove it. We're certainly not in that terrible shape even if we're called in that spot, so it's certainly a pretty clear spot to go ahead and shove for me. And dynamic wise as well. If he min raises here, we'll certainly be 3-bet shoving over that min raise with the ace-2 suited. Go ahead and fold the 2-3. The Jack-7 suited at this stack depth, I'm going to go ahead and flat it. And again, we flop some. Okay, so we know that this guy is c-betting frequently. He's also min-raising his button frequently. Effective stacks have changed a little bit, but I could either go for a check raise in this spot, or I could go for a lead. I do flop a gut shot, a backdoor flush draw, so there's plenty of equity here. I actually prefer to go for a lead in this spot rather than a check raise the way that effective stacks are set up. The reason being is that even though if I check raise in this spot, I'm leveraging my stack. So if he c-bets 100 and I make my check raise like 250, which I would, it's certainly leveraging. Like, it's putting him in a spot where he needs to shove or fold, but we're certainly risking a lot more in terms of percentage of effective stacks by check raising rather than leading. Now, we had also set up a leading dynamic a little bit earlier where we'd made 2 leads earlier, but we haven't really set up a check raising dynamic at all. So I certainly prefer, given how the match has gone so far, to go ahead and lead here, take control of the pot. We get to see a turn a decent amount of the time, and we also get to barrel on a lot of cards as well, or evaluate on a lot of cards at least. So we'll go ahead and lead 110 into 200 here. We get a really quick flat, and we get the King of Clubs turn. This is a really good turn card for us, obviously, because not only do we have a gut shot, and now we have flush draw outs as well, and quite possibly a jack as an out. I think this is a spot where if we check, he's probably going to go ahead and bet like a 9, or he's going to go ahead and bet an 8 here in order to retake control of the pot and try to get himself to showdown in the cheapest possible way. So for that reason, I'm actually going to plan to check shove on him here. We have so much equity that we don't mind when we get called on the turn. if he does decide to hero call it off, but I think them times are going to be few and far between if he has like an 8, for example. He might snap off with a 9, but even against a 9, we've got a lot of equity going to the river, and an 8, he's likely going to be folding, and quite often with a hand like a 6-7 or a 10-7 or a Jack-10, he's going to bet them on the turn to try to take it down, and he's going to have to fold to a shove. And we get to take down a really nice sized pot without having to get to a showdown at all. So I like the way that stacks were set up on the turn. And I also like the fact that there was a lot of hands that he was going to bet on the turn that couldn't stand up to a check shove. So that was my plan for the turn. He actually went back and checked the turn pretty quickly behind us, and given that we river the flush, we do have to go ahead and obviously just bet for value in this spot. I don't think that anything other than betting for value on this particular river is a good plan, because given that he checks back the turn, I think he's most likely got some kind of showdown value, and given that he has some kind of showdown value, when the 2 overcards come on the turn and river, I think it's highly unlikely that he's going to bet that showdown value on the river. So we do go ahead and just bet for value, and we get called really quickly, and obviously have the best hand in that spot. He called us down with an 8. So while my assumption that he was going to bet an 8 on the turn was wrong, I think we probably extracted the most value as it turned out overall. The King 9's a very standard call here for like 9 big blinds, and we end up chopping that pot against King 7. The King 4 off here is pretty close for like 9 and a bit big blinds. I think I like to go ahead and fold it here. I don't think he's necessarily the type that's shoving super wide in that spot, so I think that it's a close fold, but I definitely think that we'll find some better spots against this particular player. I think it's really close though in general, the King 4. So we're basically just in shove fold now. It's not going to be very interesting or anything. The Jack 3 suited is a fold. The Ace 5 is a shove. And a lot of you guys will already have a fairly good idea of shoving and folding. Now we run into the Ace King in this spot, which is unfortunate, but we get back to 20 big blinds now. Not much you can do in that spot, basically. But as you can see, we've already actually had this guy all in 3 times, I think, now at this point in time. I think we lost the Ace-10 to the Kings. We lost the... we chopped the King-9 to the King-7, and we lost the Ace-5 to the Ace-King. So the fact that we're giving ourselves a lot of opportunities to beat this guy, even if we've been behind in them situations 2 out of the 3 times, the fact that we're giving ourselves the opportunity to have this guy in multiple times show that we're doing something right, generally speaking, and generally means that we're chipping him down fairly effectively. As it turns out, I 3-bet shove Ace-4 offsuit for like 19 big blinds, and we get there against Ace-5, which is obviously fortunate for us, but this is the 4th time we've had him all in, and eventually you're bound to win an all-in at some point in time. So we do go ahead and take it down, and that will wrap us up. Now, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and post them below the video or in the 2+2 forums. I'm quite happy to answer any questions that you have about what I've said in these matches or the matches themselves and the hands that I've played. Until next time, look forward to speaking to you guys soon. Good luck in all of your games. This is mjw006 for husng.com, signing out.